So I'm in the city of Numazu, Shizuoka, Japan, and this is yet another episode of Kenmogi's Street Brain Radio. It's windy, so you might experience some noise, but I'm going to talk about the extreme positive psychology of Japanese manga culture, and this should be a really interesting topic to talk about. So the father of Japanese manga is Osamu Tezuka, and he's sometimes even considered to be the god of Japanese manga. And it's quite interesting how he started his career as a manga artist. He was a medical student in Osaka, and he was, one day he was walking in the city of Osaka, and it was during the Second World War, and most of the city was bombarded very heavily by the Allied forces, especially the US Air Force, and it was scorched to nothing. So Tezuka's home was in Takarazuka, and he had to walk all the way from Osaka to Takarazuka, and there was nothing. It was just a flat land because of the heavy bombardment, and you can imagine he was probably despaired, and he was so probably miserable, not only because of his personal difficulties, but also because of the fact that his country was losing the war, and his beloved city of Osaka was heavily destroyed, almost to nothing. And so it was during this walk back to his home in Takarazuka that Osamu Tezuka, the father or god of Japanese manga, determined that he wanted to be a manga artist. He went on to produce such masterpieces like the Hekujunoko or Lion. I forgot the exact title of that. But it said that it's inspired Lion King by Disney, and also Black Jack. This is a manga about a legendary doctor who is not such a good-natured person, but he does miraculous operations and saves lives. And also Firebird and Adolf and all these wonderful manga works, which considered to be masterpieces and classic gems in the history of Japanese manga. Anyway, so at that time, it was not considered a very respectable or indeed rewarding occupation to be a manga artist. Today, it's a very different story. I mean, it's every young artist's dream to become a manga artist with a huge hit, because you can be a millionaire and you can be famous and you can lead a really fabulous life nowadays because of the international popularity of manga. But at that time, the market for manga was almost non-existent. So it was such a audacious move by Tezuka to be a manga artist. So it is quite interesting that Tezuka made his mind to be a manga artist at the depths of his despair. And this is, I think, what constitutes a very interesting aspect of positive psychology. It is something that you can rely on when things are going bad for you, and when you have the tides of time against you, you can try to be a positive person, try to do positive things, and to go on in a very really audacious manner to blue ocean of challenges, and that was exemplified by Tezuka. And Tezuka was not alone. There is this very famous apartment house called Tokiwaso, which is in the suburbs of Tokyo, and there Tezuka led a group of young manga artists who later became known as great masters of the manga. For example, Fujio Akatsuka, who was the king of many gag manga like Tensai Bakabon, and Ishinomori Shotaro, who went on to write masterpieces in robot animation, and Fujiko Fujio, who created the world-famous Doraemon franchise. And all these wonderful manga artists gathered around this really shabby apartment in the suburb of Tokyo. And it's really a far cry from what the manga artists enjoy these days. They were poor, and they did not really get much social attention in the beginning, and they were not financially well paid, but they shared one thing, that was their dream to become great manga artist, and that's what they went on to become actually. And so Tezuka and his young followers shared this audacious dream of becoming manga artists in a time when there were evidently no social infrastructure, if you like, to be a manga artist. And that was something really serendipitous and also almost miraculous thing to that these young manga artists gathered around this. It was kind of a Woodstock of manga artists, if you like. I mean, these young guys, in a heated debate as to what kind of manga they should create, and sharing bowls of ramen noodles and drinking beer, sake, and working until late at night, or even sometimes until the morning, and finishing the job. And the manga editors of the burgeoning manga magazines gathering in the flat, and all these wonderful moments of manga creation is now a material for much dramatization and films. And it's one of the legends of modernizing Japan after the Second World War. So manga itself is something that was born out of really adversarial economical structures, and it is not something that you do when you have a lot of money to produce things. I mean, it's a permanent artwork. After all, if you want to author a manga, all you have to have is some pieces of paper and pens and ink and a room, not so spacious, and you just jot down what you have in your mind. You don't have to have cameras or movie films and all these expensive materials that would be required to make a cinematic representation of what you have. Interestingly, when Osamu Tezuka, although he was a great manga artist, went on to make his own animation, his company almost became bankrupt. I mean, he had financial difficulties because in that field, capital would mean success. You need to put a lot of money into your work, and it's a gamble. And Osamu Tezuka's genius were not fit to do that kind of mundane, practical, works. Of course, some of the animations became successful, but at the same time, his company was losing money. So, it's really wonderful to think that manga started as a poor man's attempt to make a visual representation of fantastic stories that they had in their mind. So we should always remember this origin of manga. Today it's a lucrative business, international business, and where millions of dollars are made by successful works. But in the origin, it was a really shabby attempt, and all of that was born when Osamu Tezuka was walking a scorched home run towards his home of Takarazuka from Osaka. I wrote about this in my book, The Way of Nagomi, and if you're interested, you can check it out. And even today, I think a really new genre of art being born from the hands of very poor souls. I mean, when I say poor souls, I'm not saying that in terms of spirituality or the urge to create. They are not poor in that, but they might be poor in terms of money, material goods, and so on. But that's when a really new form of art is born. So I hope those people who are listening to this, I don't know how it's coming through because of the wind and so on. I'm now nearing the Numazu station, and actually I am passing through the side of a hotel with a Love Live sunshine sign on it. Love Live is, I think I understand, it's a Japanese manga animation franchise, quite popular among otaku people, and now it's a huge industry. But probably the heyday, the best day of manga and anime in terms of really audacious attempt of young spirits might be passing. I mean, now probably you need to be established in order to enter the manga market with the large, players dominating the field. But even today, I think it is fair to say that it is probably safe to say that you can probably kickstart a new genre of art by delving into the most abandoned and unnoticed field of work. And imagination is your limit. And since imagination is virtually limitless, sky is the limit, or the space is the limit. I have now arrived at Numazu station, back from the city hall where I gave a public lecture. So I am going to stop my recording of Kemogi's Sweet Brain Radio. So I finish with this observation that really wonderful works of genius are sometimes born out of the most difficult and arduous situations. And the creation of the work itself is a testimony of the fact that we can live positively even in the most negative circumstances. With that thought, I keep walking to my future and into the station.